Okay, let's bring in Matthew Bryza into the studio, former US Deputy Assistant Secretary of State. And it is a great pleasure to speak to you once again, Matthew. So let's start with the UN Security Council meeting. We believe there's going to be a vote on a resolution coming up. Normally what happens here, there's a vote. Won't the US just veto it and nothing will happen?
Absolutely, and thank you, Nick, for a chance to be with you and have this discussion. Yeah, the U.S. will veto it, and there are no consequences. You know, the United Nations has no enforcement mechanism, so it essentially, in this case, the Security Council is a name-and-shame location, and a debating club, and a place to score political points or political injury.
And just to go even deeper on this, even if the US didn't turn up for this meeting, obviously it wouldn't happen, and the resolution was passed, would anything happen then?
No, still not, again, because of the lack of enforcement mechanism. So, I mean, the Security Council, if a resolution passes, that's the highest expression of international law. But again, I think the U.S. would just ignore it. And, you know, Donald Trump, he does what he believes is right. I mean, domestically in the United States, right, the big debate is about whether or not he's going to challenge the U.S. court system and legal system and just exert executive power as far as he possibly can.
I'll get to the legality of what Donald Trump has done in a moment. But first, what do you think Donald Trump's motivation was in carrying out these attacks on Iranian territory?
That's a great question. I think, first of all, he wasn't sure what he was going to do until the last minute. And reporting this morning coming out of Washington is that he said up until, while he was in the Situation Room, as the bombers were already in Iranian airspace, was reserving the right to call off the attack if, in fact, the conditions warranted. So I think his objective is he realizes, or he thinks that, Iran is intent on developing a nuclear weapon or nuclear weapons and would be intent on using them or threatening to use them against Israel to eliminate Israel, which is the stated policy of the Iranian government. Also, I think Trump realizes that if Iran were to possess nuclear weapons, Iran's negotiating leverage would change the dynamic of all sorts of competitive diplomatic processes out there. So he was waiting for an opportunity, I think, to strike. Didn't know when it would be, and I think when he saw that the Israeli attacks were so successful in suppressing Iran's air defenses and in conducting the attacks, he saw an opportunity to pounce.
We're talking about a country launching military assaults on another sovereign nation based on what we think are fears and beliefs.
Right.
The world would be some mess if everybody was just carrying out such attacks based on, oh, I think they might do this, I fear this.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a dark road to go down. Mm-hmm. So in terms of legality, Donald Trump acting on fears and suspicions, was he within his own authority to carry out this action?
Not according to international law. I mean, the UN Charter, right, forbids this sort of non-self-defense military assault. I mean, under international law, a state is justified in using military force for self-defense and for human rights reasons, to protect a population from being slaughtered. Neither of these ensue. I'm sure what the legal people in the Trump administration will say is, well, this was a preemptive strike. We were preventing a bigger war. So in that sense, it's an extended argument about self-defense and about protecting human rights.
But his own national intelligence chief said that we don't think there is a threat, that we don't think that Iran's developing nuclear weapons. So who is he getting this fearful information from? Well,
so that was last March, and then he has repeatedly said she's wrong if she said that.
Why doesn't he fire her then? if he thinks she's incompetent, and this is a major principle for him, why would he not just dismiss her?
That is a great question, Nick. And additional reporting coming out this morning from Washington is that that was all part of the ruse. There was a great bit of deception that happened in many ways about this attack. So one of them was to sow this sort of misunderstanding between Trump and then his Director of National Security, Tulsi Gabbard, when in reality, it doesn't seem there really is such a difference of view. In addition, another form of the deception was actually the attack itself, where a bunch of B-2 bombers took off from the United States. Some went east and conducted the attack. Some went west, looking like they were going to Guam to just prepare for a later attack. So there's all sorts of deception in play here, and I think that dueling assessment of Iran's nuclear ambitions was part of it.
I want to talk about what happens next. I mean, we're not sure whether Iran will target the US. Again, that's a dark direction to go in, but we know that Iran and Israel continue to exchange missiles. Now, a lot of people might think this is a bit of a mismatch, Israel against Iran, especially with the US kind of in Israel's corner. But I was looking at the numbers. So Israel, geographically, is around 2% of the size of Iran. It has around 10% of the population. That makes a very concentrated target for Iran to aim at. And it is now breaching Israel's aerial defences. Israel's not used to fighting long-term wars. Iran is. If Iran continues to breach the air defences of Israel and civilians are dying in Israel, how quickly do you think public support for Netanyahu's military campaigns might disappear?
Yeah, no way to tell. That's purely speculative. But I agree with you. Israel's never been struck quite like this. And civilians are dying. For now, they're rallying around the flag, even though there's such opposition to Netanyahu inside Israeli politics. There are protests before the assaults on Gaza. The horrible murderous killings in Gaza have only exacerbated that societal split. So it's hard to predict whether the rallying around the flag and to defeat Iran and eliminate its nuclear capability will outweigh the pain and suffering concerns within Israel. But I think what Netanyahu is thinking is that he's going to try to put an end to any sort of assault by Iran by creating pressure on the regime. Israel has been attacking economic assets, energy generation plants, for example, police, Ministry of Justice, all sorts of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, all sorts of internal Iranian governmental and economic entities. I think he's hoping that that will put enough weight on the Iranian government and generate enough popular discord that the regime will maybe collapse under its own weight, which is a terrifying thought in itself, because could that lead to a civil war in Iran with consequences we can't predict?
We need to find another half hour at some point to discuss this in greater depth, but it's been a pleasure for now. Matthew Bryza is my guest, former US Deputy Assistant Secretary of State.